And action! Welcome to another episode of the Arcfluence podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Karakan, your host, and here are my co-hosts, Paul Fatkins and Nino Samarzik.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
Is that thing working, Nino?
Yeah, it does work actually now. Yep.
Well, this is episode 8.
Yeah, I think so. We're almost in double digits.
Oh,
can you believe it?
Almost in double.
And what are we talking about today, Paul?
Oh, I don't know. More of the same? No? Something different? What are we talking
It's
about?
actually a pretty hot topic these days.
Well, it's a pretty
these years.
very relevant topic. Yeah. Especially the last 3 years.
I'll go ahead and say it. We're going to talk about how commercial spaces are going to residential.
Yeah.
Specifically office.
Yeah.
And specifically in the big city downtown areas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of these blighted areas that have been ignored for many years, and now we have all these activations and new city projects that are coming alive into a lot of major cities and mid-sized cities. And now we're seeing people come back to the city, and it's interesting because during COVID we saw this mass exodus,
yeah.
and now we're seeing people come back, and I guess it's kind of finding out this generation, like who wants to be downtown, investors on who's going to be renting these spaces, what's happening with commercial spaces in general, and kind of discussing why it makes sense, because we're kind of in a law on commercial investment. There's a lot of money out there, but I know a lot of investors are pausing to say, like, it's hard to find a really great deal right now in the commercial space, even though it's maintaining. There's still some demand too. But,
Well, and the other thing to factor in too, I mean, within the last couple of years, right, everything's been reinvented and restructured with even how people work and, whatever they're doing.
That's a big driver.
You used to wake up, get ready, and commute into work, right? You're in your office space, you have lunch downtown, and then you go back home at the end of the day, right? 3 years later, after COVID, yes, some people are coming back into these downtown centers, so there is some migration back to the city centers. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people still working from home and still not doing that traditional, wake up, commute, and commute back type,
Even
process.
though there are like many companies, including my company, is actually still trying to kind of reinforce that like office culture when we all back in the office, so we can actually still face-and-face communication, collaboration is still crucial. They're still keeping the open policy, like 2 days or 1 day a week you can actually work from home. And in some instances, many companies, just to keep their like a pressure workforce, they're allowing them to still work from home, which now pose the big problems because many of these once occupied office space are sitting empty in these big cities,
a lot of these
not
spaces,
bringing revenue,
and they're being leased. So now you're dedicating all this money towards an office space that you don't even own, and it's not being utilized by your employees.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So a lot of since it's been a couple of years now, right, that we've gone through the pandemic hitting, and then year after, a lot of these companies, like you said, Nick, they're not fully utilizing the office space, right? And it's just something that's weighing on their books. So they've decided to cut a lot of that space out of it. And so now you have a lot more vacancies that are also existing within these office spaces that are in these, downtown centers.
which actually hurts the city because there's no income taxes anymore from all these vacant spaces.
Yeah.
And now they're looking at different policies, maybe changing the policies to maybe find and looking for different solution how to can actually resolve this problem. And one of them is potential conversion of the office space to residential living in downtown area.
And I know some cities like Columbus are not necessarily hit as hard with issues like this, but I know cities like San Francisco and New York, you spent a lot of time in New York in your early days, Nick, those cities have been especially hit hard with these vacancies and, the amount of office space that's available within those cities.
Yeah, they really dropped their prices on the square footage. Although I've heard recently it's starting to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it was a couple months ago, I heard a number for San Francisco, and I think it was over 20 million square feet of space that's vacant right, in the downtown center. It's like almost 30 million square feet of space. So, I mean, again, like when you get into a major metropolitan area like that, you're talking a significant amount of space that's just sitting there, right, not used, because a lot of these companies have decided to let their workforce stay remote most of the time.
Yep.
And even like they'll set up like a hoteling station where instead of having a 100,000 square foot office, they've reduced it down to like a 30,000 square foot
Hoteling station, exactly.
And so then you have people that pop in and share a workspace that's common, right? And then they're just not in the office every single day.
It's just a shift of the work culture, because even now, like you can see a lot of companies just hiring people to work remotely on even long distances.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And that was like even before COVID, and now it's all thanks to all this technology.
And we're doing it.
Exactly. So it was like it just people find it more convenient, you know,
it's convenient for the worker and it's convenient for the company as well, right? I mean, obviously it's the same thing for, like you said, we're doing it. Like gladly would give a laptop to somebody to work out of Cleveland, right? No problem, right? If you're efficient and able to work up there, great, have at it.
That's pretty much. I mean, it's still, there are some like pros and cons, and only time will actually tell how much like certain companies are being hit by this change of the work culture. But on the end, it's probably one of the trend that's still gonna linger for a quite long.
I also think there's still some creativeness that investors are trying to come up with to make this work. So it's not necessarily converting an office space to 100% residential.
Yeah.
They're seeing just mixed use.
Mixed use,
they're doing
exactly.
feasibility studies on what's going to work the best and what's going to be the smartest move to see the most return on their investment.
And that leads, I mean, we'll get into that, but that leads to a whole nother host of issues.
That's another host of issues that you have to take care of that. Yeah.
I was going to say, you said you think it's going to be around for a while. How long? You think it's just going to be this way, or you think we'll hit some point where maybe we restructure how we're working?
I usually see, when you look through the history, that trends have no tendency of reversing back to old.
Yeah. So you think going forward?
So I think this is just
gonna.
This is a trend that will never change. We just have to live with it, because honestly, even when I was talking with my wife, who's actually at home 2 days a week, we pay less daycare. She can do when she's doing a little lunch break, she can do all laundry and stuff, and set up the kids to do the homework and go back to work. So it was like I'm seeing that we'll actually transition to some kind of hybrid system that we just have to find a way how to deal with it. I don't think we're going to return back to looking at civilization. We never turn back to the.
Well, this is also why we're seeing more requests for home offices and for in midterm rentals, short-term rentals,
flexible spaces, stuff like that.
Flex spaces. I mean, some industry definitely, for example, I know I'm working a lot in healthcare, and there is a lot of encouragement trying to do telehealth. It didn't really live up to the expectation yet. And still because I see the tendency when we design these exam rooms, there was how we see how through the time, and very short period of time, we're reducing the number of these telehealth rooms. They're telling me that this system didn't really pick up in healthcare environment. There's still kind of people depending on touch and feel, face-to-face contact. So some industry may have less prone to this change, but some of them actually, like a sales, management, I think these are actually affected the most.
Yeah, and I think it also is just a matter of time too to see how that evolves, because eventually, my father, who doesn't want to get on a computer or at least, it's, the rest of us are going to be on board because we're going to be used to working this way. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's as you said. I mean, we maybe when we get older, we're not going to be on a top of that day like technology, but we're going to be in completely capable of using technology we're using today, which already gives you a lot of work online capabilities.
So I know for me personally, it's like we've been in this house now for about a year. So it's like before we came here, the office was always kind of like a secondary thought. Like, oh yeah, I can set up my desk over here and kind of work over here. I think even at one point in school, it was like in my bedroom, which is terrible.
Yeah.
You got to separate where you sleep and where you work for sure, because otherwise you're just like.
And now you can't see yourself without this space.
Well, yeah. So it was like, again, that mentality shifted. Right. And it's, I need something dedicated. I need it to be my own like escape area to where I can go and get work done.
Yeah. So for me, who lives downtown, Sarah and I have a beautiful office.
Well, I was going to ask, like,
but we work together.
Yeah.
And like now I'm thinking, all right, how can I have my own office?
Yeah.
But how important was just even the conversation of having the office in the home? How important was that conversation recently compared to 5 years ago?
Much more important.
Yeah. Now it's way more game changer now.
Even how you talk to me about your standing desk, you know.
I love my standing desk. Yeah.
Oh, that's very good. I love I wish my desk is standing.
Yeah.
So one thing also that maybe you mentioned the mixed use. I think that's going to be because okay, we all working from home. We feel more comfy, cozy. I don't have to dress up. I'm still in my PJ and I'm working. But eventually, I'm gonna need that socialization. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, some of ours is still gonna be like a computer, me, and games and my virtual world. But majority people depend on socialization.
Of course.
And I think enhancing that, as you said, investors have to be creative. They have to lure people back to the space, to the public space. I think the role of the public space and the idea of mixed use, idea of the work within walking distances, I think is going to be key. Because people, I know like the other day I was traveling to work, I was stuck in the traffic for a 1 hour, 15 minutes. I was late in a meeting. I came all like irritated. If I just
were irritated?
Yeah, can you imagine that?
Not at all.
Oh my goodness! So I was even surprised.
Traffic always gets me excited.
And and if I stay home, I won't be like losing like an hour and a half in the traffic. I will be on time with my meeting, and I will have things done. So even commute has to be revolutionized, or maybe we just stick with the walking distance.
No, I agree. We used to. I mean, I feel like when I meet with a client and we mark up the drawings in real time after when we're reviewing a preliminary drawing set, they appreciate that. However, we're now finding, now that technology is catching up, we're now finding like we can have a meeting on Teams and then go use Bluebeam to do edits in real time. So now, and it's all to scale. Before it's me doing some messy sketches. Yeah. That
Bluebeam Studio is a must these
your
days.
sketches have improved over time. By the way.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, of course.
They've
I
gotten
think
better.
I'm still practicing.
Yeah. I'm now at a 7th grade reading level.
Yeah, you started at like a 2nd grade level, so yeah, it's improved.
I
don't know where that came from. All right.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that conversion to look at. So what actually triggered for office space to actually convert to residential? I think the major reason is there is vacancy of the office space, and there is a need for housing. But the problem is there is a need for affordable housing. So, and that's why I think this is the key how to actually revitalize the downtown area, because now you have all these services that you desperately need within the walking distance.
But I think that's where the cities have to step up
and
incentivize the developers.
Zoning, because when you see, and I usually say like the good example when actually modernism get fully implemented is American City. That's a zoning. So you sit in a car, you go for entertainment, then go to work, then you go to the suburbia for dwelling and relaxations. So you cannot do all these things without the car. So city has to step up the game, start, and we see the initiative, especially in the Columbus area, that all zoning is gonna give up on enforcing this hub-orientated mixed-use little pockets in a city when people can walk, socialize, work, exercise, do majority stuff they need within walking distance.
And see, for me, that feels normal because
Yeah.
I grew up in New York City for most of my adult
Yeah.
life, and that's the way it was, right?
And
So
that's what you're missing, probably.
when I came back to Ohio, and I'm like, and I live downtown. I'm
Yeah.
like, I have to drive.
Yeah, I know, and that's like the only now key. And Paul, maybe you can speak on that. Is like how we can, and what are actually, because not all office space can be converted to the
No.
and still be affordable.
Yeah. So just the number to throw out there for New York, I just saw it on my cheat sheet here. 94 million square feet for New York City.
My goodness.
So I mean, like, 3 times more than San Francisco. Anyway, not all can be converted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, I will say this, and I think Nick can agree with it as well. The housing demand that's out there, just in general, is a reason why a lot of people are starting to look at offices for conversions, because pretty much everywhere across the country, housing demands
The builders
are
can't
pretty
keep up.
high.
Yeah,
They
they're
cannot.
not building enough houses
Yeah.
to meet the demand.
But your requirements for what you need for a residence or a dwelling is very different than an office space.
Also, I think you are seeing some incentives coming through municipalities because here in Columbus, they want that bigger tax base, and
Yes.
and with all these new housing developments on the perimeter of the city, it's not necessarily benefiting them.
No, because they have to develop the transportation, or
Sure.
they're gonna have zillion cars on the street.
And they're getting all this requests like we want a new symphony, and all these city amenities cost money, and rather than raising our taxes that are already kind of on the high side, it makes more sense to grow that tax base by increasing density.
Well, and that's also why the cities should incentivize developers, because right now, if a property is sitting vacant, they're not getting funds.
They're losing
from that.
money.
Right, they're losing money right away.
I mean, even just with current market interest rates and things like that, there needs to be more incentives because it's hard to find a good deal.
That's another catchphrase that I like: the urban doom loop. Have you guys heard of that? So it's basically this bad cycle that you get into where
Vicious cycle.
your vacancies start to increase and the amount of people that are there occupying the spaces goes lower and lower. Funding for the city goes down, and then all of a sudden they can't reinvest back into infrastructure and other things and amenities, and it just keeps going to where all of a sudden now it's a broken system.
Well, that's why I'm excited for Columbus, because we have all this business development coming in with Intel and all the other companies. We're actually, if you guys are going to be around this month, March 19th, it's a Tuesday, we are going to be in, Coin is going to have a speaker that's going to talk about all the growth development that's coming. It's going to be so much fun. Actually, this might even air after. Never mind. We're recording too far out.
I was actually I think that's a person who actually you work in my previous firm. I may be wrong, but I listened that I think it's the name of the presentation is Intel on Intel, and it's a very, very good presentation.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of housing development even needed, right, just for the Intel effect that's going to happen within Columbus
huge.
is going to be huge.
Well, it's 40,000 jobs just for that. So I feel like that.
Yeah, and we already have a housing market that is booming and constrained, right, and has demand. And now all of a sudden you're injecting this large investment into it, right?
And there's several other companies that are moving, like support companies, like the people who do the uniforms and all this other infrastructure.
And like challenges, if we can talk a little bit more about challenges in that conversion, is like you have like a multi-story building.
Yeah. So let's go back to so like in a typical office building, right?
Yep.
So I've done a couple of conversions actually. I don't know if you even know this. So even before all of this hit, San Francisco, 100 Van Ness, with my previous firm that I worked for in Chicago, we did an office to residential conversion there. And then when I was leaving the firm, we were basically in the middle of converting Tribune Tower in Chicago from the offices there, from all the printing and journalism times. Basically, all of that was long gone, and they converted all those offices into residential as well.
Sure. I mean, this has been happening for quite some time, but I think COVID really accelerated this process.
But your typical floor plate is a pretty large open floor plate. You usually have a core with elevators, stairs, stuff like that. And your restrooms, you usually have one location for your restrooms.
Yeah,
and
they're all grouped together.
They're all
in
grouped
one,
together.
Yeah.
Now, if you're converting this to a bunch of different apartment units, how do you think the restroom layout's going to be for that? right?
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
No.
Yeah. So I mean, like even right there, just reconfiguring the bathrooms, right?
Big undertaking.
It's a huge undertaking, and that's why not all towers and vacancies are ripe for the picking, right? To convert over into residential units, because you're talking about a massive cost and investment into restructuring how that floor plate works,
And how are you gonna make that affordable living?
Yeah, and that's just residential. You mentioned mixed use before.
Sure.
Now all of a sudden, if you're, I want to have a restaurant here, and I want to have I want to keep some of the office spaces. And I want to do something else. Now you're talking about all these different uses, and just even how people get up and down to these different uses, and how that elevator
separate the
system
lobby,
functions.
separate the elevators.
Well, I know New York City has designated certain buildings specifically for hotel style short-term rental living, so they can maintain that common bath idea, and they have rooms. So you can rent these rooms, and there's shared.
It's almost like a hostel.
Yeah, I don't want to use that word.
No,
but
I know.
Sure.
But that's what people can relate to. What I was actually reading the article on this one, and it was actually related to New York City existing office stock, and they actually seeing that especially buildings that are built before all these beautiful inventions such as air conditioning, which is before Second World War.
Tribune Tower was a lot easier to convert than the 100 Van Ness.
Yeah, because these buildings didn't have like a really deep floor plates, because soon as you actually move so far from the window, you're actually reducing the number of 20-foot candles. Mm-hmm. And your 20-foot candle lighting, interior lighting, was a key number that you don't want to go under it, because then you no longer have a category A office space, then you category B, and then you having less return on investment. So they actually realized that this older building that they don't have these deep plates, they still relied on natural ventilations, which is key for residential area. So you have all these operable windows. So these are actually much better candidates for this conversion. And top of that, they have that historical feel.
Sure.
Yeah.
So these are actually can be not only affordable but even high scale residential living areas.
I'll throw it out to you. You have two houses in downtown, right? One was built in 60s, 70s. Another was built right at the turn of the century, like 1910, something like that. Which house would you be more interested in character-wise?
1910.
That's
right.
it.
We celebrated ornamental architecture a lot more back then. It wasn't so expensive.
Yeah.
And now we do developments for profit, which can hinder some of those interesting details.
Well, and during that time
craftsmanship,
during that time too, with offices as well, there was also this whole trend to seal everything up tight. So again, he mentioned operable windows, right? You didn't have that with a lot of these office buildings. They were completely sealed up. You couldn't even open a window
Air
to get
conditioning,
breeze in.
Well, because one person jumps out of a window and everything changes.
Yeah.
But also back then, when you're designing, they didn't have this technology. So of course you're going to have natural lighting. Of course you're going to have natural ventilation.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we have like air conditioning, now it's all about floor plate and how it's all numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to extract as much square footage from this lot that is already expensive and multiply it by X number of stories. That was the logic.
And
you know what I'm saying?
You were limited on how high you could go too, and then you'd also need light cores in the center.
Exactly. Now you have this after a Second World War and a better technology, better structural systems, and you can go really, really high.
If some of these newer structures, if power were to go out and emergency power didn't
kick on,
you would be caught in the dark.
You're in a horror movie
in the middle of day.
Very deep, very far away, very deep plates. So
so these older buildings are more of candidates.
It's more candidate because, as you can see, a depth of the typical apartment building is 3 times less than the regular office space, especially from these 50s and 60s, even 70s buildings.
Yep.
Because first, awareness of the environment, and before that, we're just using our resources aimlessly. And first, like kick in RT was like during the 70s, during the oil crisis. Then we actually start switching our like starting being aware that like our energy and our like sources are not like limitless, and that actually start triggering the effects on the architecture and everything. So yeah. So it's very hard to convert the big office spaces from late 50s, 60s, and 70s.
It still blows my mind though that somebody thought it was a great idea to seal up the building as tight as possible and to allow for zero ventilation. Right,
and do you know what also?
I know exactly
people
why.
jump out of window, but you can make it so the window doesn't open all the way.
It's less that honestly. It's more. That's what makes the headlines, right?
Yeah.
But it's less that. It's more like how can we maximize our square footage to make the most money? Rentable square footage.
Exactly.
But having an operable window has nothing to do with.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's just
but
crazy.
It's also there is like this because they try to like to reuse as much of the existing air in their air conditioning systems. It wasn't like, especially for offices, is not 100% return. You always have like a 20 or 30% of the reused air, which triggers the sick building syndrome, as we all know about it, because we all like sealed everything, we put everything on technology, and suddenly this reused air start hitting people. They start having migraines, poor concentration, less natural light. And back in days, we only have like neon lights and halogen lights, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Which have that like a negative effect on concentration and everything. So you see how we can apply that day technology to the full extent to benefit us, and now we see how that actually wasn't really beneficial for us.
Now, I think you talking through all that is a lot of the reasons. I mean, like some of that exists today, right? Depending on the office, right? But I mean, like again, like the design that goes into some of these offices, they're just rehashing stuff, right?
Rehashing stuff, exactly.
And it's like it's buildings that have been around from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and they're doing like an interior renovation, but they still have. They're still sealed up. They're still designed a certain way.
Yeah, and I call them dinosaurs of the age. And same things with like these, I mean, I have nothing against 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm actually the 70s music freak. I love that period. For example, look at all these malls built in that time with all this giant parking lot around them. I mean, these buildings struggle to be reused.
What malls? They're no longer around.
Yeah. So it was like you see many of these giant dinosaurs, single-story dinosaurs, still many of them sitting empty, or they're just being torn down, and we have to find the creative souls to can actually reuse these stocks or create something more engaging.
So I think it's important to recognize that having empty, actually a good counterpart would be like empty houses on a street that are boarded up.
Yeah.
Bring property values down.
Yes.
It increases crime. Same thing in the commercial realm. If we're having places sit vacant, it's going to encourage bad behavior. And
we already see that, especially in America, downtowns are struggling.
So in order to activate those spaces again,
exactly,
we need to get people moved into those buildings.
Exactly. So we have to, and it's not like a one way to resolving the problem. There has to be multidisciplinary way to cure the American downtown area, and one of step will be that conversion of the office space to something more meaningful, something more affordable, something more within walking distance.
I think you hit it on the head there too. It's like I think the cities are going to give more incentive to affordable housing.
Yes.
I know there's low interest loans that are available if you're going to do specifically that, and you're required to do that for so many years.
Yep.
And again, I'm just trying to find if I'm thinking from an investor's mindset, I'm like, well, I'm only going to do if it's worth it to me financially, right? What's the financial motivation?
Yeah.
And I think that we're serving our cities and people who need it by providing those amenities.
Yeah, because you still have like a core amenities there. I mean, you still have like a well-known like a healthcare system in downtown area that they are still like there for 100 of years, and that can actually perfectly serve this new community, this people who's gonna live in this.
Sure. And I would also challenge you this. When I lived in New York City, I lived in a building. It had a bank in it. It had a supermarket. It had affordable housing.
Yep.
It had wealthy people. It had middle class people.
Yep.
The fact that all these types of functions are in the same space. No, you didn't notice. There was no blight. There was no problems. Like we lived there in harmony, right? I love living downtown in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like it's beautiful. And I feel like I don't know that I'd want to designate a building strictly for this or strictly for that. That's why I'm motivated by the mixed use, which is why I think if you can pull it off, there is definitely some pull there. You can sell these luxury penthouses for top dollar and then have a rental, a couple floors of rentals.
So what do you think? What do you think? Why European counterparts have no crisis in downtowns because of the mixed use?
Right. Well, they're not.
I know there is also historical core in it, and they're full of tourists.
Yeah, a lot of tourism.
Yeah, which actually drives locals nuts. But there is another problem.
They also don't realize what a benefit it is.
I know, but it is. But there is, like everything else in life, the balance is the right thing. Yep. You see, when we talk about these buildings in 50s, 60s, and 70s, no balance, just pure hunger for a profit create a problem. It resolved the problem short term, but resolved like
long term. It just catastrophe, invites suffering and problems.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's going to cost more in the long run.
So yeah, and I think that it's a multidisciplinary action for a city, and I think the cities around the United States, even in Columbus area, are recognizing that.
I agree.
It's it's global. I mean, you mentioned like stuff in Europe, but I mean like there's cities like London, cities like Frankfurt that are also struggling with these same issues that we're struggling with here.
Yeah.
I know there's a tower in Frankfurt.
Germany, Frankfurt.
There's a tower that's there that again mixed use.
We were there, Paul.
Yeah,
we went there.
We went there, visited. A lot different now than it was then.
Sure.
Yeah.
But 2019, they opened a new building, which they completely reinvented how the elevator system worked, right? Mm-hmm. And again, they found the way to reinvent the use of the elevator system so that they could have a building that was mixed use, right? And have it function appropriately. So again, it's like, I think people need to also get creative with how they're finding the solutions. I think cities are realizing it, right? So they're looking at tax abatements and zoning regulations and things to change on their side to make it, attractive for developers to develop things. Developers are looking at it, how to restructure something the most effective way, cost-effective way, efficient way possible, right? In order to basically turn a profit for them. Because, like you said, Nick, nobody wants to dump money into something if it's going to lose money. And then, like these other companies are finding ways to reinvent how systems work within the building.
I think it's a good idea, especially when you're mentioning the elevator, which is important things in multi-story buildings, is that vertical communication. I know there was now, once again, working on one of these big projects, they have this in these elevator systems, this curative capabilities, then it almost can predict what certain types of population using the building. We are actually in certain time you use the elevators and where to go.
Do you know the function on your phone? Like, have you guys experienced this? Like, you get in your car to go somewhere and it kind of knows you're going there. It predicts where you're going to go.
Exactly.
And then it already enters in your destination.
Yeah.
Have you had that?
Yeah, actually, I have that. Yeah, especially if you're going home, it will automatically as soon as I put a 6.5. Automatically will give me
so what you're talking about, it's the same thing with this elevator system.
It's elevator system, and we actually installing this one very high-tech hospital now is going to be this but many of patients, they're going to have this wristbands and stuff, and we'll actually read the wristband and will automatically tells you what elevator going, what department you're going. We'll send you to that caller, and same things can be much more curated, friendly for a users in these tall buildings,
And it's going to
but you have multiple functions.
It's another layer of security too for the
Yes,
residents.
exactly. And I think that's a key. It's a key. Security is another key, which Paul says, like when everything degrading, then security brings the crime in. If something is active, we all know from the school's eyes on the street, when you have lights, when you have people buzzing around, will actually scare crime away.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's why there's less problems, like less violent crime in New York City in a lot of these mixed-use buildings.
Yeah. I think that we have like a process of gentrifications, and that work well in a big city. And I think the New York is a good example. I mean, compare Times Square now from Times Square before 90s.
Oh yeah,
it's a huge difference.
Sure.
It is huge, and just start from security. And I don't want to tell you I was in Times Square on every corner during the 80s.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
On the corner, specifically the corner. Right?
Exactly, specifically in the corner.
And now there's a police station.
Exactly. So, and it's almost like that's when you say that you have to break that vicious circles to create healthy organism, because city is the organism.
Yeah.
And if you if start decaying, will start decaying very fast, like a human body that if you don't care of your body is gonna start decaying rapidly. Cities are even more sensible, and I think that's one of these crises that we always gonna hit in our civilization. With COVID was one of them. We'll just trigger it and just have to bring smart people together and create solution.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because historically there's always been some challenge, right, that we've faced with housing, with whatever, right? And it's like we have to respond to it. We can't just sit and it's going to be okay. Right. So, I think cities need to take an active approach. Developers need to take an active approach. Even architects. Right.
Yeah.
Like we're having a conversation today.
Exactly.
About this.
Yeah.
We can't just sit by. It's like we have to find a way to
have to
reinvent.
voice our opinion, honestly. And because we're so passive, and I keep telling you guys, I feel so sorry why architects give up on the residential so easily. And as I said, it's so hard to reverse the trends. It's very hard. It's almost impossible. So you have to be on top of your game. You have to bring, because investors, they only worry about money, but also you have to tell them which kind of, because they usually look the short term.
Yeah, look at your long-term gains too.
Exactly, and you can create that with a smart design, because design is that they can actually bring people more together. In my company, they call that search for an impactful design. So I think that's a key for every architect and every young student of architecture to start thinking about it.
Oh, and you need to look at the examples that have worked, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a few examples in San Francisco and Chicago and Frankfurt, right?
Exactly. And even modern building can be changed.
Yeah.
But what actually tears me apart, like especially in American cities, is how easily we give up on existing because American city is not like old as a European city, and your like a building stock is not
Sure. Well, the American city is designed around the automobile. For
exactly.
Well,
exactly.
But, I mean, like,
but you still have like these beautiful buildings.
Yeah, sure.
They're like torn down and something glass towers being built.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying. I think that trend needs to be reversed because we see the beauty in these historical vestiges.
Yeah.
Of the cities.
Well, there's also examples like in New York where they'll preserve, I think we talked about this before, the Hearst building, where the Hearst Tower, they preserve the exterior of the original structure, and they build a glass tower inside
of it. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's compromises
inside of it, on top
and
of it.
look at the what is the name of this park that was actually built on a former elevated railway? It's
the High Line.
Park.
Yeah. Which
Look
is
at
great.
That phenomenal example.
That is a great.
So it was actually was like a design.
Now we're starting to get a whole other topic.
Like
adaptive reuse.
No, this is a good example when someone convinced the investors to keep this, and now it's a major attraction in the city.
Sure, yeah.
And now you can build your infrastructure around those, which you can turn into
even
profitable.
Exactly.
I think that's why people So this adaptive reuse idea, right? I think that's why people are like, well, we have this existing office stock.
Yeah.
Why can't we just take it and use it for
Exactly.
residential? We need people, to have houses to live in. Let's just convert it.
And all these buildings, they have stories you can tell, and people love stories, honestly.
I also think like we're now experimenting with all these new types of construction, like 3D printing and things like that. So if we have these existing superstructures, these steel superstructures, there's the potential to remove those guts and
complement
and plug and play.
Plug and play.
Yeah. So Hunter and Van Ness, like it was a brutalist precast concrete panel system that was on the outside of the building. I mean, like it was like a full gut, and we completely reskinned the entire building. And again, it was a glass box at the end of the day, but still, it was
but it's a more efficient glass.
Yeah,
and
it had operable windows.
Operable windows.
It looked like a glass skyscraper versus like some 50s brutalist concrete tower.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's ways to do things and reuse and do it in a smart way.
I love modern architecture, nothing against the glass, but today's glass versus previous glass, it was single glaze windows with the air conditioning 100% on. So yeah, that they will not even pass today's codes.
Yeah.
Great stuff. I think we can talk about this like forever. But we have to stop at some point.
Sounds like you want to stop, Nino.
Sounds like.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we'll save the adaptive reuse stuff for another day.
Well, yeah, I think that's a phenomenal topic that we can actually talk about.
There's the train station in Chicago. We actually looked at putting residential units on top of that. So again, similar thing, keeping the base intact, reusing parts of that, and then building on top of it.
And having the hub right below you, man, that
absolutely.
You can actually go and
not only that, but a lot of those, gosh, I could talk forever, but like a lot of those bridges or stations or hubs is perfect for activating that space with people.
Yes.
So you can put storefronts, residential, and then now we have these common spaces that connect maybe a downtown area to a neighborhood that a highway potentially divided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Many businesses will be triggered for that because they have ease of communication with this. It's like you will see the tendencies in the cities that they're building stuff on top of these communication hubs.
And I think there's going to be more opportunity for that in the next few decades as automobiles become autonomous.
Yes.
And, transportation gets a little bit more organized and calculated with AI.
I was actually listening the interview that the creator of Remats, you know about that car Remats?
Yeah.
So he was
it's Croatian, right?
He's a Croatian fellow. So
amazing car.
I mean, I can understand Croatian 100%. So is like he was talking about that many people will not need a car in a sense like owning the car, because owning the car is expense. Many people would like to have autonomous cars just to use it as needed.
Yeah.
And it was like and that expense on a car and maintenance of the car, unless you're like the petrol head and love to have like a fancy Ferrari that you can use on weekends.
Well, then you go outside the city
exactly.
and you on the track or on the country
because
roads.
You're gonna use this like self-driving vehicles. I won't even call them vehicles. That's gonna give you from point A to point B. And for me, instead of sitting and staring at the windshield and who's gonna hit me if I'm gonna hit someone,
you get some work done.
I have some work done. Exactly, like sitting in a train. Honestly, that's a type of commuting that I can do.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap up there from this one. It's been fun, you guys.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, if you have a project that's converting office space to residential, reach out.
Reach out. We're gonna help you.
Good plug, Paul.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys on the next one.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
This has been the Arcfluence podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.